Yo, what is good, YouTube? I'm going to be showing you guys how I make this. It's a pretty basic tutorial, so I hope you guys enjoy. I'm learning along the way. Just bear with me. That I've never made a tutorial, so I don't really know how to do this stuff. I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible since it's my first tutorial, and you guys could probably learn some basics. If you guys are more advanced, this tutorial is probably not for you. Okay, let's go ahead and start. Like I said, this one's gonna be pretty basic. So let's start with the settings just to get this out the way. I'm gonna be doing 1920 by 1080, 30 frames, and I'm going to be using Octane. You can use whatever render you're comfortable with. I just use Octane now that I have it. So Octane. We've got that in there. There's a lot of tutorials about like render settings and all that out there. I'll probably make a separate video if you guys need that from me. But for now, let me just show you what I use. I have this preset. Usually use 1,000 samples, 500 1,000 samples. GI clamp, I bring it down to 1. That gets rid of like fireflies and whatnot. For this tutorial's sake, I'm going to be using 500 samples. Path tracing. Alright, since we got that set up, I usually do 300 frames for the loop. It's usually like 10 seconds. So let's start building the loop. I'm thinking of making like a very simple room where the camera flies through the rooms and we can put stuff inside the rooms. That way we don't have to worry about backgrounds, and fading the distance and all that, because everything's going to be contained within a room. So it's going to be kind of like a cube, and the camera's going to be flying through. So let's start with a cube here. We're going to make our walls. So let's use, like I said, I'm just winging this because I kind of know what I want to do, but I haven't actually done it yet, if that makes sense. So we're going to do a Z of 10, an X of 5, and a Y of, let's say, 1,000. Yeah, that works. Okay. Then, so this is going to be, we're going to need 4 walls. The camera's going to go through it, so let me just think how I could set this up. Okay, so let's go ahead and move this one on the x-axis by 200. Actually, go back. Let's just go back. Let's duplicate this. So we do to duplicate, you I believe it's the Windows keys, and then you drag it, or you could Command D, I believe. Okay, Command E. No, I guess not. It's just Alt and drag. I usually just use the shortcuts. I forget how to duplicate otherwise. Okay, so we're going to move this second one by 200. This first one by negative 200. Now this is kind of confusing, and like I said, I'm just winging it. I probably will have like a better structure in the future. So this one I moved by 500, and this one I'm going to move positive 500. So you can see like the camera's going to be moving through this space. Okay. So let's grab these two and then duplicate. Like I said, use the Windows key and then drag. And let's move this one in the Z-axis by 1,000. So you kind of see how our room is starting to get built. Now, I've already thought about like what I want to do with the lighting, and I kind of want the lighting to be coming in from the side, so from like the left side and the right side, and possibly at the top. We'll have one light here, one light here, one light here. I'm just thinking of this in my head. Once we get further into it, you'll be able to see what I'm kind of thinking of doing. So let's go ahead and grab this one and duplicate it, and then rotate it by, I believe, 90. and then let's move it in the z-axis. I believe it should be 500. Yeah, that works. So let's do what, 750? 750. Oops. 750. All right, cool. So it's 750, and then we need another one. Where's this gonna be at? 250. Yeah, so it's gonna be at 250. Now, like I said, I want these to be kind of open. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna move it to 200. Move this one to 200, and then move this one to 1,000. I believe. No. What is it? 950. Let's move it 1,000. That's fine. I got OCD and I like to keep these, you know, straight and all that. So let's do what, 850? Or is it just 800? Okay, yeah, let's do 800. So there's gonna be light coming through these like little slivers in the wall, right? So make sure you grab both of these walls right here and then duplicate them again. And this time they're gonna be -500. Yeah, that should work. I believe. Let me come through here. Nice. Okay, but one thing that I do want to do is I want these to be like on the far ends. So what is that, like 250? This one is -750, these two walls, and then this wall is gonna come this way. 250. Yeah, cool. So I believe once we add the plane, it should be, I believe we should put it up Z by 500 because it'll line up perfectly. I believe it should be 1,000 by 1,000. I'm not really sure. We'll find out right now. Okay, so it's 1,000 by, oops. The width is going to be 1,500, which is crazy because I kind of want it to be a little bit like more, what's it called? Like longer on this side. So let's keep it even and be 500 here. And then what we're gonna do, and I'm sorry that I didn't think about this in the beginning, but we're gonna move this forward 250, and then move this forward 250. Like I said, I'm gonna clean up my tutorial making process / habits in the future, so I can like make this more comprehensible. But I'm just like winging it because I said I wasn't gonna do it, but here I am doing it anyways. So let's take the floor. Let's just name it floor, so we don't get this confused. Duplicate it and then call it a roof. I just like to call it rough. So usually when I click and drag, like you could hold shift and then drag it and it'll go in increments of like 10 and all that. So I'll keep it at 500. This is going to be a roof. Like I said, we're trying to keep it all enclosed so we don't have to worry about like the sky and all that, because that could be a different tutorial for another day. So we basically have our basis of like where the camera is going to go. I'm going to go ahead and drop a camera. I have an icon here for the Octane camera. You might be using the default camera. You could just use this. If you don't have this icon, I believe it's in Object Octane Camera here in the Octane window live viewer. Oh, and if you don't have this window here, I believe you just go to Octane and the live view window, and this should pop up. Alright, so like I said, I kind of want to like organize this a bit more so it's not so crazy in the project manager. So I'm gonna just click all these walls and then click Alt G, and it should pair them into a null like group instance. Then we could just call it walls. That way, like if you want to like turn the walls off, you can click this. and you can see what's going on here. So another thing, I guess I should mention this. I actually use Quixel Bridge. It's I believe, like an asset library that just saves so much time. Their assets are great. They have surfaces, textures, decals, 3D assets, and I believe you can look up a tutorial of how to set that up. Like I said, it is so awesome because it just transfers all the assets to your project, and it also has like support for different engine renders. So I'm gonna be opening that up right now so I can get my wall textures in. The project file I hand out is probably gonna have different surfaces and whatnot. I'll try to keep it like uh, easy to use, but since this is like you gotta pay for the subscription, I probably won't be able to hand these over to you, especially because you might get in trouble if you use them in like a project for a client and whatnot. So yeah, so this is Quixel Bridge. Like I said, I'm going to just, start slapping things on the geometry because I want the tutorial to be kind of quick. Let me go into my own surfaces and find something that might look cool for the walls. Okay, so I kind of like using this tile because it looks all messed up, and I really enjoy messed up stuff. That doesn't sound right, but yeah. Okay, so we're gonna click export, and this is the coolest part right here, is that it just transfers it straight into my project. See, here it is. There's like a little instance where the actual material looks odd. It doesn't look like what was in the Quixel Bridge. If this happens, usually I change universal. You double click here, change universal to glossy, and then octane. And then the specular usually like has full blown specular, which means that it's like gonna be super shiny. I like shiny stuff, like especially because it gives awesome reflections. But if you want to get closer to the actual Quixel Bridge material, I would bring it down a bit or turn it off altogether. Okay, so we're gonna use these for the walls. Yeah, and this is where like the creative process starts, because you can choose like whatever you want to do with your materials and like what kind of look and feel you want to get. Like I said, you don't have to follow this tutorial exactly. You can build this geometry. I'm just trying to show you how I make my visual loops and how you can get started making visual loops of your own. Start making some backgrounds and all that. Okay, so you'll notice that like since I have my textures turned on, you'll notice that these aren't like really mapped correctly. Since we have them all clicked right now, you can click and drag all of them, and I think you can modify these, yeah, together. So I'm just gonna bring this up to like what, 5, so it kind of looks much better mapped here. This also might change once we fire up the render and whatnot, but this is kind of a good basis right here. Alright, so the floor. I actually wanted to do something interesting with the floor. I wanted to like add flowers I wanted to add flowers to the floor. Since there's going to be flowers on the floor, I'm going to be looking for like a dirt texture. I believe I have some black dirt texture. That's what I wanted to do, because that's what I was thinking in my head. Let's try to find, yeah, something like this Iceland rocky ground. Let me download that really quickly and then export it out. You might not even be able to see this ground, but in the instances where you will be able to see him through the flowers and all that, it'll look pretty dope. I'm going to leave the settings exactly like it is, and then drag it straight into my ground. This one's kind of hard to see. A good rule of thumb, I would say, is usually when you're making like a bigger scene, you definitely want to go up on the tiles. For now, let's leave it like this, and then we'll adjust accordingly during the Octane render. Let's do the roof. Let's do the roof. So for the roof, this looks interesting. I don't know if it'll look good in this particular scene because it's like pretty shiny and this is like all grungy looking. Wood, nah. I would say, so let's go into my surfaces and let's go to tile. Let's use this one, dirty floor tiles. Or this one works too. Let's use this one, dirty floor tiles. I'm gonna put it on the roof. Did I download it? Oh, there it is. Put it on the roof. Okay, so like I said, this is basically the setup. Your camera. Oh, let's go back to the camera. Okay, so the camera, we're gonna go into it. Click this little button right here to get into the camera, and then we're gonna like zero out X, zero out the Z, zero out the Y, zero out these rotation values, so you have it looking straight into the actual geometry. We're gonna go back just so I can see what's happening here. There's our floor right there. So let's do 250 and then negative 2000 just so we can see what's happening here. Okay. I guess the next thing to do is add the flowers and whatnot. Before we proceed, I kind of want the floor to be like way lower so we have more room to work with here, so it doesn't look like we're just squished into a small room. So let's get the floor right here and then bring it down by like 500, I believe. That might be way too much. Let's do a 250. 250 works. Okay, so once we got that going, I want to show you guys how to add flowers and whatnot here. So I have this icon called Octane Scatter. You could find it under Objects, Octane Scatter. This is basically Octane's way of like the MoGraph cloner. So I click that. I'll show you guys how to do it if you guys don't have Octane right now in a little bit. But basically, you want to click Octane Scatter. I'm gonna go back to my Quixel Bridge, and like I said, this freaking what's it called? This asset library thing is like freaking amazing because you can also find like plants and all that. So let me go to my 3D plants. Let's use this flowering plant just because it looks pretty dope. Export this. It's gonna give me actual geometry of my flowers, and you can see them right here. So it's gonna drop in all these assets, and like I said, it's already like Octane ready. You don't have to like convert these textures and whatnot because the plugin in the Quixel Bridge does it for you, which is just freaking crazy. I'm gonna shift and click all these together, and then drop it into the Octane Scatter. Okay. One thing else I want to do is I want to click and drag these. Click Shift and drag these underneath, just so they're not in the scene. Sometimes you can see them in the scene even though they're not supposed to be there. Just a good rule of thumb is to click and drag them out of the scene even further if you want, because they're just like references. Okay, so in Octane Scatter, you click it, you go into Distribution, and I'm gonna click Surface. Let's keep it at 1,000. We're gonna use it. Basically, this is gonna like scatter these flowers into this floor. Under Surface, you grab the floor and then you drag it into the surface. So you'll see like right here, you'll see all these lines pop up and all that. What's next? I guess this would be a good time to start firing up Octane just so you can see what's happening here. But before I do that, I wanted to add some lighting so we can see what's actually happening, because if we just fire this up right now, we're not going to see anything. Before we do that, really quickly, I'm going to grab the roof, and 20 segments by 20 segments is fine. You can click C or go here and then make the actual object editable. Then go into your, I believe, the polygon selection mode. I'm going to go into the middle, I believe. And I'm just gonna wing what the middle is, because I know you can take your time when you're doing your own thing, but I'm gonna just make a hole here, and you can like figure out how to do this way faster. I'm just winging this. Okay, I hope that's in the middle. Like I said, my OCD is gonna kick in if it's not in the middle. Okay, and then once you have that, you just click delete. So we now have like this little sunroof kind of deal. I have another icon for a light, but you can find it under objects, lights, I believe area light. Yeah, area light. So it's gonna bring in this light, which is right here. I'm gonna bring it up on the y-axis to about 800. And usually by default, like where the blue like arrow points is where the light's actually shining towards. So I'm gonna bring this down so it points downward. I'm gonna bring it to -90, I believe. Yeah, -90. And then on the z-axis, I'm gonna bring it to 250 because that should be the middle, or 500, I believe. And you'll find out really quickly that my actual roof is not in the middle. I think it's off by 1. So let's fix that really quick because it's going to bother me. And if it did not fix it, then we're just going to have to move on. So here's the light. You can actually make the light bigger or smaller by just holding T. Or you can go into this right here and then bring down the values. I usually just use T. That brings up the scaling option tool. Okay, under this little icon right here, this is where you can choose your power and whatnot. For this top light, I'm actually gonna give it a like more warmer tint, and then on the side ones, I'm gonna give it like a blue tint. Just my art direction of what I'm thinking of doing with this. But you guys can choose whatever light you guys want. You guys can go crazy. To do that, under texture, I go down to this drop-down menu. Go to plugins, Octane, Gaussian spectrum. No, Gaussian spectrum is really good to use. But for this instance, I'll use RGB spectrum because you can just click right in here and then click the color and then just choose your color. Gaussian spectrum is more advanced, and I could probably show you guys what to do with that in another tutorial. So I'm gonna make it a little bit warm. And let's keep it like this. Yeah, let's keep it like this. Let's go back into our camera. Let us move forward a bit. Move the camera up to like -900. And then bring the camera down to like 150. Yeah, that's cool. And then you'll notice that like since we didn't like fix these are going to be, these little slivers are going to be uncovered. An easy way to do this would be to just make a cube. You guys can leave these here, but I'm gonna, just for this tutorial sake, I'm gonna close these off. Make a cube by just clicking this. Just really quickly bring this up. Make it a bit bigger, just so it'll close the gap. Bring it forward, I believe, what, 750. This is not going to be pretty. I'm just going to close these gaps. Click and drag. Is it 1300? It's actually funny how like sometimes the project files, I mean the actual full render looks really neat, and the actual project files that I come out with just look terrible. And that's something you guys, if you guys are looking to proceed with this in a more professional manner, I would suggest you guys clean your project files, so when people look at them they could be easily digested and worked around with. Okay, so I'm gonna shift click these, and then I like to use a fillet. So fillet. I don't know how that's pronounced, but I'm gonna just say fillet. I'm gonna click it, and it's gonna like give this little. It's gonna, what's it called? Make the corners rounder. And under the radius, I'm gonna use 15 just so it's not too round. And then for these columns, we can actually make it more interesting by adding a different texture, and that's what I'm gonna do right now. So let's go to surfaces, and let's add. What if we added these? Nah, that just doesn't look right. Let's keep it pretty simple. How about we use like a white surface? Something like this, I guess. This might or might not turn out like a pretty visual, but it kind of covers what I do. Some of it is trial and error. Well, most of it's trial and error. Remember to bring this down, get the mapping right a bit. Oops. 5. That works. Okay, so now since we have a light and we have Octane camera here, now we're able to see through it. Quick tip, because this whole project window is not what's actually gonna like render. I like to go to options, configure, go to view, and then right here in opacity I like to bring it up to like 90, and then this is gonna like black out these bottom parts that aren't gonna actually be visible to the camera. So let's hit the render and hopefully it won't crash, because Octane tends to crash and then I had to start over the whole render. So here goes the render. Let's before we proceed, let's actually save this. Like I said, it might crash, so let's do this. Tutorial 1. Okay, so right now this looks like really bad. It looks poorly lit. The flowers are way too huge, and you can hardly see what's happening here. So let's do one thing first. Let's grab these columns and put them into the walls group section. I like to click this little lock because it does the same thing that I did here in the viewport. Okay, so let's decrease the amount of flowers just so we can see what's going on. Let's bring it down to like 55. Okay, so here's our flowers. And you can tell right now that the actual like textures are kind of odd. So let's go into the textures. Let's go to glossy. Instead of universal, let's go to glossy and then octane. And look, you'll see right away that these are way more neater, if that's a word. Okay, so now that we have this, we're gonna, I believe that looks pretty good. Let's do 155. Okay, that's looking pretty cool. You'll notice that the variety of flowers are there, but we can add more to it, and I'll show you how. Go to MoGraph and then Effector, Random, Parameter. Go into Parameter, click this position off. Go to Scale, that way we can like randomize the scale of each flower by 0.25. Don't go too crazy or else the flowers might be too huge. And rotation is where I want you to choose 900, or like a big number, relative number. And then for this to actually activate, you have to go into the Octane Effector, and then click and drag this random. Let's call this, I believe, flower. Yeah, flower. That's misspelled, but whatever. Flower. Let's misspell both of them. Say it was on purpose. So now we got that going. Really quickly, I promised that I was going to show you guys how to do this without the Octane scatter if you guys don't have it. Basically, what you want to do, let me turn this off right now. You want to go into MoGraph, Cloner, and under Cloner, it's basically the same thing as this Octane scatter, but instead of well, actually, it's almost the same. It's like basically the same. You're gonna want to click one of these into it, and you'll see that they're like not aligned and whatnot. This isn't even a flower. Let me get a Let me get a flower, an actual flower. Hopefully this is a flower. Okay, so here we go. Here's a flower, and right now the actual cloner is set to linear, so they're just like multiplying upward, but we want to multiply them across the floor. So instead of what's it called, mode linear, choose object, and this is where we're going to click our floor and click and drag into it, and you'll see that they're right here. They'll actually start popping up, and the count, you could bring up the count by like 60, so there's more. I would suggest you use render instance. It'll be like less taxing on your computer. And you'll notice that these flowers are like not aligned correctly. I believe you can go into transform, and yeah, you can go into transform, like flip these up. I believe -90 should be the correct method. And this is all plug and play. Like you have to like figure this out on your own. And then you also have this effectors tab, which you can like drag this flower effector right into it, and it'll affect this as well. So, like I said, if you don't have Octane, this is the way to do it using Cloner. There's specific like benefits of using the Cloner, and there's specific benefits of using the Octane Scatter. That's a whole different story. But let's go ahead and delete that because we're using the Octane Scatter. Turn that back on. So one thing I like to do in order for me to like check the scene but like actually move the camera and see what's happening is I like to go into options, update check, and then click off camera. So when I do get out of my camera, the actual scene in Octane does not update. I mean, it updates, but it doesn't move my camera. So now I can actually see what's happening here, and I can move my light into a different like spot or bring it up, bring it down. So you see how like it's like starting to affect here, but it doesn't move anything. So one thing I do want to do is on the Octane light, I don't want the light to actually be visible. So under Octane light and this icon right here, you click visibility and then camera visibility. And that hole there does not look really flattering. So we have a couple options, but we could cover this in another tutorial. I'm gonna leave it like that for now. That's a whole art thing that I just don't like, looking at the hole just being there. But let's just continue. So what I'm gonna do is from here I'm going to duplicate this light. I'm gonna put them on the sides, like I said, on the slivers. So let's duplicate that light. Bring it. What is it like? Bring it to x -1000, and then we're gonna actually use 0. I think on the x-axis, bring it to -90. Let's turn off this light just so we can see what's happening with this light. And we're definitely gonna bring this down to like 0. Right here, you can actually bring the lights up like this, so more light comes in, or like you want to mess with the shape and all that, you can do that. And then we also want one on the opposite side, so I'm just gonna grab another one and then x1000, but it's gonna be pointing the other way, so we want to rotate it just by 90. Like I said, these are going to be blue-ish. So remember, you click this, go into RG spectrum, and then instead of this color, you could choose like a bluish tint to them. If you want to just grab the same color, you can click texture right here, copy, and then go to your other camera, and then click paste. Really quickly, this is your left light, sorry, left light. So I'll call it left light, and this one will be your right light. This one will be top light. Top light. Cool. So now we're getting something kind of interesting. I would suggest that these lights are kind of overpowering, so let's bring them down to like 55. And let's turn that top light back on. Okay, that's pretty cool. I don't really like the roof as much, so let's see how we can like dim the lights on the roof, so like the top is kind of more like mysterious, whatnot. Let's see, turn these off. That might be affected by these lights here. So if we bring these down, we might get the... Nope, that doesn't work. We could cover this here, and then this light won't actually hit the top. But how about instead of like covering this because it looks ugly, how about in this instance we just make it more interesting? And I believe the best way to do this is to go into the texture, 2.2. Oops, I'll put 12. 2.2. Looks better already, but here's a little like tip that I like to do. You'll see that here in the actual texture, there's no displacement. There's a normal, but there's no displacement. To make things more interesting and actually add like geometry to this texture, we could add a displacement. And in this displacement, you can go back to your texture that you use. This one's called Dirty Marble, so we have to find it or use a different one. And since I don't know where it's at exactly right now, this moment, I'm gonna just click a different one. This rusty metal sheet. Right click go to files, and then this window will pop up, and it's gonna give you a displacement map, which you can like literally just click and drag into this slot right here. Click no. In the level of detail, I like to use 4K. And right here in the height, you can play around with this until like something happens. You'll see that there's like this new deformity happening in the texture, so your actual geometry is going to be changing a bit. So you might have to compensate by like moving this down a bit. Yeah, that'll work. This is like not the greatest example of like displacement making anything more interesting, but you will see like in specific textures that like little rocks and all that will start popping in and all that, instead of it being a flat texture. So for now, let's just go back and take this displacement off. It didn't really do much. It's probably just going to be more taxing to the render, and it's not adding much to the render. Bring this back to 500, and bring that light back on. Cool. What else could we do? Yeah, let's leave this like this, and I'm gonna show you guys how to set up this into a infinite loop basically. Let's just add a little bit more flowers before we do that though. Cool. Okay, so what I actually want to do is I want to grab these lights. Let's pair them together, call them lights, Alt G, and bring them under Octane light. So wherever the light goes, wherever the camera goes, these lights will follow, as you can see. And it's gonna give like some really awesome dynamics where the lights, like the shadows are changing and all that. And this also helps for loop it's called what's called continuity. So like your lighting won't be off on the last frame as the first frame. Cool. So let's gather all our assets that we use. I don't believe we need to put the random in there, so let's just grab these. All GM, we'll call it full. I usually just call it full. And this button right here called instance, you click it and it's gonna make a duplicate of whatever you instanced. So that's cool because now we can just grab this full instance and move it forward in space. I believe we used 1,500 for the length. Yeah, see? So now the room is like starting to take shape. And then you want to like duplicate this as many times as you want. depending on your scene, also like you can see that we can't really tell what's happening in the background anymore, so we won't need as much multiples of these instances. But in other cases, we might have to multiply like 3 or 4 or 5, 6, 7, how many ever we need, so this loop can like seamlessly loop, if that makes sense. So we're gonna duplicate this. Yeah, we're gonna duplicate this. Let's do it just to be safe. Let's duplicate it 2 more times. This also depends on your scene, because if your scene is super heavy, this is gonna definitely like slow down your renders, slow down your GPU and all that. One thing I've noticed, if you use this instant mode on render instance, it will delete, like let's say it will delete the flowers. I don't really know how that works, but you're gonna have to keep it in instance, because if you hit render instance, look, the flowers are gone. Just so you know. So click that back in instance. Let me save this just so it doesn't crash. And then let's also duplicate one backwards, so the lighting is like consistent. So let's grab the full instance and then bring this. What's this? Positive 1500? Oops. Is it minus 1500? I believe. Yeah. So there you go. Cool. So now that we got these, you can definitely like name these and whatnot, and have these all organized. For this tutorial's sake, let's just go back into our camera. We are going to go from 0 to 300. For this tutorial's sake, like I said, I usually use 300. For this tutorial's sake, let's do 100, so the render times aren't that long. So it's only going to be 100 frames where this camera moves in space. Let's get out of our camera really quick. Coordinates, z-axis, yeah, z-axis. Okay, so on the first frame, we want to go ahead and click this little keyframe Z in the z-axis, and then go forward to 100, or to the last frame, whatever works, and then plus it by 1500, because that's the length that we're going to cover. You'll notice that this didn't update because we don't have it switched on, but you'll see right now once we get this configured that it's going to work. So before we move on, let's I usually right click here in animation, show F curve, and then you'll notice that this like curve line is not like linear, so we want to go ahead and fix that. By default it goes into this, usually doesn't work out because it slows down and then speeds up at the end, or no, it speeds up in the middle and then slows down at the end, and the loop just like gets lost basically. So right here, click this linear, and it'll just fix itself. It should be good now. So get into your camera and then go to option, update check camera. So what you're checking now basically is you want to make sure that your first frame, which is 0, is exactly or close enough to your last frame. So OCTANE has this really cool feature where you can like store a render buffer under compare, and you can click store render buffer, and it's going to store your first frame or whatever you stored, and now you can go forward. Once you go forward, you notice that we could click this line here, and you'll see that there's like very small differences, but it's pretty much the same. This pretty much guarantees that your loop will be seamless, and it's a really cool tool that OCTANE has. So you'll see that the loop worked, and just to confirm this, like I said, you can go back to compare, disable it, and you can like scrub through this a bit, and you'll notice ends here. This is frame 100, and then frame 0, same. So it's gonna loop. Cool. So this is really interesting. Look, you'll notice that on frame 50, because of the way the lights are set up, your render goes completely dark, and that's not cool. So what I would recommend is like I said, you play with lighting, so lighting is consistent and like works in your scene. The way I'm gonna fix it, I'm gonna quickly like fix it. This isn't the greatest way to fix it, but my top light gets like cut off because of these walls. So I'm just gonna bring it into the room instead of it being outside, and this should technically fix it because it is no longer being cut off. You see that? So we no longer have darkness during our frames. Cool. And then it leaves this ugly looking hole on the top for no reason. But we can fix that really quick. Let's see. How would we fix that? We could just make a plane and then add the textures onto it. That's how you would fix it. I'm not going to do it now, but that's how you would fix it. It's pretty easy, but like I said, I'm going to keep moving on. So you basically have your loop set up. You can add more to it. I'm just going to show you guys how to set this up to render, and then we can see the final results. And I'm going to go into After Effects and show you guys what I usually do for my post processing. So under settings, right here in the settings, like I said, we already have these set up. You want to go into save, and I save them as OpenEXRs. Go into where you want to save them as, wherever you want to save them on your whatever, what's it called, drive or external drive, whatever you have. Save them onto that. Make sure you're using OpenEXR because if your render fails, you don't have to start over, because these are like pictures that you will compile later. They're like sequences of pictures. They're not actually a movie file that will just get corrupted if it fails. You can just pick up where your render failed if the app crashes and whatnot. And then that should be all we need for now. Under output, make sure you do all frames, 0 through 100. Your resolution, if you want to do 4K, you could bump this up to 4K and it'll be good the way it is. One last thing, right before we jump, I really like to go into this Octane tag here, and then post-processing, enable it, and Octane has this really cool bloom effect under bloom power. I usually like to go to either from 5 to 25, and it's just gonna like add this little effect to your lights. It just looks really neat, and I would recommend you go into this bloom power and play with these little values here. So guys, this is pretty much all for the 3D side of things. I am going to render this out. Like I said, it probably won't look that great, especially since it's a beginner tutorial, but I will show you guys what my process is to compile this together and send off the final render. I'm gonna set up the project files as well, so you guys can download that, and I'll see you in a bit. Yo, what's good, guys? We're back in After Effects this time. We're gonna just compile the whole sequence together and then render this boy out with some post effects that I usually like to do, and that should be it. That's how you make the whole visual. So let's go into File, Import, File. I believe it should be here. In EXR format, you'll see all these sequences in separate EXR files. Make sure Open EXR Sequence is clicked on, because if you don't click this, it's just going to import one single image. So make sure that's clicked, import, and it's going to say 0 through 100. So you can just click this into here. You guys can actually do this in any video editing software, I believe. I use After Effects because I'm very familiar with it, and it's like the standard nowadays. So I would definitely recommend you guys get into After Effects if you guys are planning to do this for a career. And just in general, it's a pretty good application to know in the industry. So once we got that in here, the very first thing I like to do is add an adjustment layer. You can go to Layer, New, Adjustment Layer, or Control Alt Y. In that adjustment layer is where I'm gonna like add my what's it called, my color correction and all that. I like to use this this effect called Lumetric Color. You just go into effects, click that Lumetric Color. This is great because you can use LUTs, basic color correction. It's got color wheels, vignette, I don't know how to say that, tints and all that. But for this tutorial's sake, we're just gonna be messing with like very simple stuff. So in the Lumetric Color, in the basic correction, you can mess with exposure, make it brighter, darker. I like to mess with contrast just to give it that that nice cinematic look. In this instant, I'm gonna use 90. Looks kind of neat. And in the shadows, so we could bring them up just a bit, so it's not too dark. Let's do 20. If you guys don't want to use this very complicated method, there's also another way to do this. This is just an alternate way to do it. You put curves. This is how I used to do it back in the day. Click curves, and then in curves you can just do this very well known technique. You click your darks down here, your lights up here, and then your mids you could bring them up a bit. And then here you can start like dialing in the look, because you know, this looks a little too dark, so you want to bring up your darks right here, and that looks pretty neat. And you'll see the difference. See, this one looks dull. This one looks more life, with more life and more color. In the curves, you could also mess with like the shadows being more blue, so give it that little blue tint. So yeah, you guys could definitely mess with the look here. I usually use Lumetric Color. It's pretty neat. It has all the stuff that I need here. Saturation, you can bring up the saturation, which is really neat. So I'll do 125 right there. Let's fit this. That looks really neat right there already. Since there's not much to play with here, you could like go crazy and add like different effects. So like, let's say I use a another adjustment layer right underneath, and I usually like to use like dust. These are all plugins that you guys could purchase or look into. I'm not going to go into much detail here, but if you guys notice on my last visual, I actually used this dust effect that like gives little flickers, and you can mess with the adjustments here. You can then preview this, preload it, and you'll start seeing like those little flickers here and there. And this should, if we did correctly, this should seamless loop. Yeah, you see that? It's pretty much seamless looping at this point. Right here you can mess with color correction, you can mess with all kinds of different exposures, different effects. You can make it glitch out, glitch in. This is basically the foundation for whatever you guys are going to use this for. You know, maybe Twitch backgrounds, or just making your music videos, react to it. That's a whole nother process, but this is basically it. I hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial, and I'm definitely looking forward to making more of these. Please, if you guys want to help out, just add some suggestions, or maybe some feedbacks, maybe something you guys want to learn. Maybe some equipment you guys could like recommend to make these tutorials much better. And I'll have the project files in the description below. Other than that, guys, just remember, if it's not good enough, just keep making more, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.